starts with one and they got retrieved. Battle of Los Angeles 1942, there were at least 2 retrieved there, so now we're at 3. If we consider this case in 1942, now we're at 4 before Roswell. Now we talk, the body count starts getting higher. This is 1942 at a base north of Georgia. I don't know where it is, neither did the wonder. He didn't even know. It was somewhere north of Georgia. This thing was 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high. There were 4 BT bodies taken alive. They later died. This thing had 3 levels. The upper deck had a control panel with buttons and switches and kind of a display. Below that was the mid-deck, which had a cutout in the center so that these beings could walk in. And on this mid-deck, there were 4 what looked like bar stools that were parked and sat behind a wraparound window with 2 smaller windows flanked on either side of the main. Now, on the bottom deck, the entryway hatch. So this is Leonard Stringfield, page 319, where you can get the reference for this thing. These beings were about 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, so we've got oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, milky white skin, and emaciated body parts, hands and arms that went down below the knees. That's what we're looking at here. And this is what these witnesses are telling us.
Were they alive? Or were
they alive?
Really interesting. So north of Georgia, this craft, this is pre-Roswell. Pre-Roswell. I mean, I know there's been a few of them, but...
Yeah, you know, there's... Okay, so, like, the crashes really picked up around Roswell, and it makes sense that there would have been crashes before that because of the whole radar thing. Now, like, when you get 1930s and earlier, I don't think so much. You know, there have been some reports, like I think there was an Aurora, Texas crash that maybe happened in the 1800s, late 1800s, 1890s. Someone forgot to bolt, right? Someone forgot to bolt on that ship and it just like lost a wheel. You get to like 1940s and on, and like, why are there so many UFO crashes? Well, it's the radar thing. It's the humans figuring out how to take them down.
This craft now that we just saw, and you've got a bunch of curious military personnel want to break into this thing. Apparently, John, according to Schratt, diamond drills didn't even make a dent on some of those craft.
Yeah, what's this stuff made out of? Crazy, right?
And engineered to be denser, harder, like resistant to the sharpest thing on our planet.
That's crazy. Also, some of it's reported to be what, self-healing?
Yeah, right. And you know, you and I have been bringing up self-healing metal quite a bit, or even concrete. Like we found some evidence of self-healing concrete, like the Coliseum even has some of this technology in there that we don't understand now, many years later, right? So yes, very, very interesting stuff.
Well, that also makes me, you know, we ran across that article the other day on the Debrief website that's talking about how scientists just came up with a self-healing metal. And I'm like, no, man, this was absolutely fed into industry, fed to the scientists.
Well, and why aren't they telling us when they've reverse engineered something? Like, just be honest about it. You probably found metal somewhere from either a previous civilization or from one of these craft. Somebody's reverse engineered it, figured out how to do it, and then they write an article as if science is so great and grand that they did it themselves.
Right. Well, humans are the end all be all. And that's like, I don't know. It's just what
we love telling ourselves that. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
This is crazy. So this was the healing stone that they kind of unraveled recently. We can see 2,000 years old on the left and 20 years old on the right, which is totally rotted. Yeah, so here's that article, Self-Healing Metal Discovery Opens Door for Giant Tech Leap. And this is on earth.com if you want to check out that article about self-healing metal. We pulled this up on Edge of Wonder a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, or something like that. Okay, so, you know, Schratt's kind of asked here whether or not, or he's at least discussing what he thinks about these people. You know, does he think they're lying? And he says, I don't think that all these guys are lying because they say the same thing. I keep getting these reports from these military witnesses of not only diamond-tipped drill bits, but torches and lasers trying to get into these crafts. One said that they shot a laser at this thing and it bounced and then destroyed a bunch of the, you know, the warehouse or that whatever, the hangar that they were in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, someone's going to take their eye out if they don't stop this nonsense. You're not going to get in.
Well, and I think it's a lot more than an eye, John. I think, like, if Tucker Carlson's information is true, that we've got some of these, you know, we've got a bunch of lawsuits going on right now for people that have been hurt or killed by some of these UFO craft. Well, there's got to be a lot that we haven't even heard about in history. I mean, think about all of the damage that's occurred.
Oh, I know. Can you imagine? I mean, look, how many has Strat catalog? Hundreds? What was it?
And he's gone through 50,000 of his files.
50,000 files? Sorry, and it's like, wow. Wow. I mean, think about how many they've actually gotten. How many they've actually gotten. And so that is, now you got to wonder, out of that percentage, how many have they actually been able to get into? It's probably a lot less.
Well, so what he was saying in the interview was really interesting. You guys definitely should go check this interview out if you haven't. Like, there's so many more stories than we're bringing up here. They were doing anything and everything possible to figure out how to get into these things, and I think eventually they even used liquid nitrogen, like dipped the entire thing into liquid nitrogen, took it out, and it got, like, of course, it's nitrogen, right? So things got more frail, and then they were able to get in some cases, not in all of them. The big question really is, like, why would they be trying to get into the craft if they were ours? So there's a lot of people out there listening to this that are like, well, these are our crafts, well, whatever. Well, why would they be trying to get into these or break into these like he's claiming, like so many of these whistleblowers have claimed? Why are all these people dying from getting close to UFOs if they're our own? When humans make something safe enough to get close to it, they have to fly in them.
I don't understand here, like the whole, you know, Pentagon releasing Tic Tac videos and whatnot, because here you are presenting something about a very high technology and then raising the question of we don't know what this is. And then pull back on the alien question and go, oh, no evidence of aliens. Well, we don't know what this is. You are literally just stoking the fires of aliens.
Okay,
you literally are.
Yeah, I agree with you. First of all, I agree with you. However, when we're talking about, for lack of a better way to say it, the mother lode of disclosure and technologies and all of that stuff, the Tic Tac UFO video is a very conveniently organized release to keep the information only going so far. Where you've got like, you've got like you've got a mountain of information and you're showing them the tip of a tiny iceberg and just letting people talk about that instead of all of this other stuff, right? So to me, that actually really makes sense. Like, why show people that? Well, it's because it's either that or people start talking about some of these other things, like Mike Schratt's 50,000 files or who knows what else, you know?
Yeah, right. Little smoke.
Pretty interesting story here. There was a 6-year-old whose electrician father worked at the base at Wright Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. So this is Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. During a lunch break, when he was visiting, this is the little boy, I assume, a janitor offered the kid a soda. And as he's getting the soda, a door opened and he got a quick peek inside. He saw 2 tractor-trailer trucks with various properties covered in tarps. There was a disc-shaped craft with triangular landing gear. 3 ET bodies lying on the ground, 20 feet in diameter. So these are 20 feet in diameter. 2 raised surfaces around the outside of the craft. The boy saw the bodies in 1946. And here are the 3D renderings. Actually, we've got so the 3D renderings of exactly what it looked like in that interview on Rise. So you can actually see those 3D renderings there. That's crazy. Look at that.
Yeah.
How would you get that there with those trucks? Like they covered them up with those tarps, and then they flew them, or sorry, they drove them all the way up to Ohio. This is why Ohio's so weird, everybody.
Yeah, you know, we've looked at a lot of crashes with remote viewing, and I can say that thematically, it's kind of all from Roswell, Kecksburg. Kecksburg has some like really weird aspect to it though as well. Whatever UFO crash it is, even back to Mussolini and that crash, and like actually that was the 1930s, I think. That happened before World War II. I did an episode on Rise TV where it's called Crashes of the Visitors, and I go down this path of like, I didn't even really talk about Roswell, which is the most well-known crash, because not only have other remote viewers covered it extensively, we found the same thing they've found. It's also kind of boring, right? It's also kind of boring after a while. While it may be amazing to some people, there's actually not a whole ton of information that you're going to get out of it that's any different than what the witnesses have already described, right? Well, yeah, it crashed. Yeah, this really, truly happened, according to data. Some of them are interesting, but most of them are just kind of like, okay, yeah, it was just another UFO crash. They got the bodies, they got the craft. It's going to happen again because they are taking them down with a radar type of pulse. It's a little bit more sophisticated now, and it's more directed. You know? So we look at weirder stuff. Right? It's like, okay, so what about the ones where a scientist walks into a ship and he starts puking everywhere because there's a dimensional anomaly in it, and outside it looked like it was 100 feet long. You go inside, it's like 3 football fields.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that's actually interesting.
That's interesting, though. Yeah, that he got that sick. Maybe it was, you know, most of that, those mechanics are in your ear, in your eardrums, in your head. So if those get out of whack, you can start throwing up right away. I mean, this is what happens to people on ships and airplanes and stuff over time.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like a weird thing. I mean, we've seen this in other projects that where there's alien type technology around. Sometimes it's like it feels like you are, when you're viewing this stuff, like moving. You can tell when you're moving through a dimensional space. What you're viewing is the viewing going through a dimensional change in space. So if a being is coming from a higher dimensional realm, has more dimensions in it, and coming into ours, it's as though like they're trying to squeeze their head through a mayonnaise jar, or into a mayonnaise jar. Like if you can imagine trying to squeeze your head into a mayonnaise jar, that's a good metaphor for what happens to higher dimensional beings when they come into this realm. And it's a discombobulating thing. And going into a different or higher dimensional realm from here, it opens up into a bigger space, much bigger space than what we perceive in our 3D reality. And it messes with the brain because the brain can't handle it.
Oh, that's interesting. Just like it's kind of like when you're in a VR headset or whatever, and you're still, but everything in the VR headset is moving like you're moving through a building. Your body gets thrown for a huge loop.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You're
right.
like, everything in you is like, what? Like you feel like you're moving or something.
Right.
Anyway, you guys, this Mike Schratt interview, there's more stories in the Rise TV interview with Michael Schratt. Definitely recommend you go check it out, and you'll be supporting John and my work. So some of the stories you'll get on that interview are things like a retrieval on the edge of Mexico, worked on both by the U.S. and Mexican personnel. So there was competition between countries and collaboration as well. Very interesting. An egg-shaped craft with a mysterious sphere inside. Craft that had experienced internal invasions, which sounds like that Titan thing that happened. It's weird. I mean, think about it, like water and space. You know? Okay, so close encounters style ships with windows all around it. So those close encounter ships like this one. Bodies being recovered, air hangars that still exist today, so large that they have their own weather inside. That is crazy. That's crazy. And then classified materials exposed for the first time by Schratt's source, Leonard Stringfield. And so much more on those interviews, so definitely go check those out, you guys.
Right.
But now we got to get into what John and his team are voting here regarding all of this stuff with Mike Schratt. And the first thing we're going to hit, I think, is Mussolini. So
yeah, the Mussolini thing was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So before you get into this, tell everyone what Schratt's claims were about Mussolini, just to remind everyone.
So I think it was in the 1930s, before World War II had begun. Mussolini and Italy was on good terms with the Vatican. And so this actually comes through the Vatican. The Vatican had apparently told the U.S. later on, when they became a bit more suspect of Mussolini and Italy for siding with Germany. But this is before they sided with Germany. So they had found a crashed ship. I think witnesses to the crash as well. And they went to the site, and they had found what they claimed was a UFO. Actually, when they took it, they didn't know what it was, and they thought it was probably mostly terrestrial origin. But the story is that Mussolini had 3 of these creatures like sitting in his office with him that they recovered from the crash.
Just chilling there, rotting.
Just chilling there. And the stories are that they were sort of large, four-headed, blonde, Nordic type aliens. That could be a little bit of propaganda-ish stuff. I don't know for sure. We didn't see necessarily what they were when we looked at this. But what we did see was that the craft was it was the shape of a wing, but with a central. It wasn't an airplane, but it could be misconstrued as like a jet airplane, the way it was shaped. It was more of a wing, a giant wing, than anything else. That's what it looked like. That's what our data has described. This particular ship, what it looks like it was for, though, was put there, crashed there in a sense for just giving some technology away. And it wasn't anything that was super duper exotic. It was something that humans at that time could understand. So what it is, literally, now I don't know what the technology is. It's probably something to do with jet engines. But what I think that this craft ultimately did was not necessarily anti-gravity. There could have been some aspects. And I think that it was basically left for them in this show kind of situation. Because, you know, we don't get anything like it was shot down or anything like that. There was nothing like that going on. Literally, like, crash landed, but as somewhat like we get the word gift showing up in the sessions. Italians had developed the jet engine earlier than others. So my guess is that this thing had to do with that specifically. It was some type of jet engine. Now some people think that it was Germany that crashed there with their experiments in jet engines back in 1933, but no, it was nothing like that we saw. But that would solve the issue, right? As far as like, and then the reason why Mussolini joined the Germans is because he knew they had superior technology back in 1833, and he's like, you know, they're going to take over the world. So that's like the whole story that's out there. We don't necessarily get that.
Very interesting. So the Mussolini thing is legit. Did you see whether or not he had these aliens in his office or anything?
No, we didn't see. I don't think that's true. I don't necessarily think that's true. They could have passed through there, but I don't think he was like, you know, smoking cigars with dead aliens.
Which would make for a better story, to be honest.
It would. So the Vatican told the United States about this later on, and the United States came in and confiscated it. What we find, like across the board with UFO crashes, is that they are pretty much all real. They're pretty much all real events.
Yeah, like 90 to 98% of them, right?
Right, right. Because there's more around it than just